How are you all? Hope you are all doing good and following the classes regularly. Children, today in this session, we shall continue with chapter Impact of Colonialism in India. Already we have completed part 1 and we have studied about the British policies and their impact on forests. Today, in this session, in part 2, we will continue with the impact of British policies on industrial sector in India. Okay, are you all ready? Children, at the end of this session, you will be understanding the problems at the beginning of the Indian industry and you will respond to the work conditions and labor struggles of workers at the mills. And you will be able to identify the large industrial cities in the outline map of India. The British government's industrial policy. In the 1850s, some Indian cloth mills were set up with much courage, first in Mumbai and then in Ahmedabad. And the factory owners demanded to levy a special tax on cloth coming from Britain, so that the cloth made in India will have a better market. Children, in previous session we learnt that under colonialism, the Britishers took raw material from our country, produced cloth in Britain, again they sold that products in India at a higher prices. But with much courage, our Indian industrialists also started setting up of industries during 1850s. And our Indian industrialists demanded the government to levy some special tax on the products of Britain so that Indian products will be encouraged in the market. But anyhow, this could not be happened. Later, in 1896, the income of British government of India reduced a lot. So, for that reason, the government levied a 3.5% tax on the British cloth as well as the same amount of tax on Indian cloth as well. See children, the British government's revenue reduced, so they thought imposing some tax on the goods, but they don't want their companies at loss, so they wanted even Indian products to be taxed. And this became the cause for a long conflict between Indian people and British government. Though these many hardships were there during British government, our Indian industrialists started some of the industries. See here, even without government's protection, factories producing cloth, thread, sugar, jute, paper, matches, cement, etc. Some of these industries were set up in India. Their rapid development, however, took place only after 1914. Though these many industries were set up in India, the development took place only after 1914. We will see the reason later. Children, here is a picture. It is there in your textbooks also. These are the Marwari traders from Calcutta. Traders means business people. See, these business people, Marwari traders, they came from Calcutta to Bombay. Why? Because during that time Mughal Empire's authority was declining and British power was increasing. So these traders, they have migrated to other cities, especially particularly to Bombay. Okay children, 1914. Just now we have learnt that our Indian industries started developing only after 1914. So why? Because so first of all, what this year reminds us 1914? Yes, beginning of the First World War. Now let's see the reasons. During the First World War, that is 1914 to 1918, the import of foreign goods means the things come from other countries into India were reduced. This is because of, there are many reasons. Britain participated in the First World War and mainly their focus on the war itself, making weapons for the war and maintaining army and sending the ships to war. So for this purpose, Britain involved in the war. So they are busy with the world war. In India, meanwhile, our Indian industry started developing. See the reasons here? Cargo ships carry the products from one country to other, known as cargo ships. So these cargo ships were on war related duties, so that there is a shortage of ships. And the factories of Europe, things needed for the war were being made, and very few goods for the Indian market. So meanwhile, there was a development and encouragement for our Indian industry. Under these circumstances, India started selling their goods in a large quantities. Because of heavy sales, there was a rapid development of industries. See children, previously the British goods were sold in India and purchased by the people. That time our Indian products sales were very low. When Britain was busy with First World War, our Indian products started increasing. So when sales increases, production also increases. So in that way, sales increased, production increased. So for that purpose, even setting up of industries was also increased. And our Indian industrialists demanded to impose a tax on foreign goods. So after 1917, taxes were levied on many foreign goods and Indian factories were able to develop speedily. Even though the industries were set up in India, there were many problems and challenges at the beginning of our Indian industry. A very large number of factories, banks, ships were in the control of Europeans. Yet, Indian industrialists developed a great deal. For example, Indian industrialists were able to control the textile industry. Children, though there were many problems and challenges faced by our Indian industrialists, there was a great achievement by our industrialists. Say for example, the greatest achievement of Indian industrialists was the steel factory at Jamshedpur that was set up by Jamshedji Tata. Children, you might have heard this name. In our country, Tata Group of Industries is very largest company which produces different kinds of products. So, this is the origin of the Tata companies. Here in this slide you can see Shri Jamshedji Tata. So, he set up the first steel industry in Jamshedpur. This is the emblem of that company, and here are the Jamshedji Tata and their family brothers. Children, what do we need to start a industry? We need so many things. We need raw material, we need machines, and we need land to set up an industry. And not only that, we need so many workers also. So there was a great need at that time in India to set up the industries. We have learnt that in 1917, so many foreign goods were levied tax, but that was not sufficient. Many resources like railways, roads, electricity, coal and iron were also required. And not only that, help also needed from scientists. We need some experts, engineers, technicians and educated workers to work in these newly started industries. But at that time, education was not given much importance in India by the Britishers. In order to promote Indian industries in our country, many organizations of industrialists were formed. One of the important was Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industries. In short, it is known as FICCI. It was an organization set up in 1927, and such organizations brought up the problems of industrialists before the government. What do these organizations do? These organizations are the voice of the business people and industrialists in India. They bring the problems and challenges and demands to the government. Here you can see the building of FICCI, Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry. When the end of the British rule, even after attaining independence, after the Britishers' rule also, the formation of a free government, the situation was changed. This newly government of India gave a lot of encouragement to the growth of industries in a very planned manner. Children, you have learnt about the 5-year plans also. After attaining independence, 5-year plans were implemented. So first 5-year plans, the importance was given to agriculture. The very second 5-year plans focused on the development of industries. Though the factories were set up in India, there were many problems relating to laborers or the workers working in these mills or factories. From 1850 onwards, machine-based industries started setting up in India, and the biggest industry was spinning and weaving of textile. In 1905, around 2.25 lakh laborers were in the textile industry, 1.5 lakh in the jute industry, and about 1 lakh in the coal mines industries. See children, when there is a rapid development of the industries in India, people in hope of employment, they started migrating from villages to the cities in hope of employment. See, the farmers, laborers, artisans started coming from villages to the cities in hope of employment, thinking that they will get a small or big work they will get at the industry. Number of laborers in cities started increased. Factories were also started setting up, and these farmers, laborers and villagers who came from village, they started setting up around the factories. See, this also you learnt in your industrial revolution. When an industry started in one place, the workers working in this industry will reside nearby the industry, and slowly that area will be developed, and that area and that city will become an industrial city. In that way, Kanpur, Mumbai, Ahmedabad, Kolkata, Chennai, these are the cities became a large industrial cities in India. See here children, have a look at this map. Here are the important industrial cities in India: Kanpur, Ahmedabad, Mumbai, Chennai, Kolkata. In the beginning, these were the major industrial cities emerged in India. Let's see the working conditions of the laborers in these industries. Since it is the beginning of industries in India, there were many problems faced by the workers. There were no proper facilities for them, and there were no rights for them. See, let us check the working conditions of laborers in the industries. First, work would begin every day at the dawn in the mills, stop only at sunset. So there is no fixed timing for the workers. They used to start the work early in the morning when sun rises, and they should stop the work only after the sunset. So there is a long hours of working. Once the work started, no question of stopping. No fixed break for even meals. The workers once they start working, they should not take a leave even for the lunch. So, if one person will go for lunch and come back, then another person should go to lunch. In that way, the work was continuously done without any break. And the workers spent whole day in the heat, humidity, noise, dust and suffocation of the mills. See, this is the beginning of the industries. At that time, there were no proper facilities for the workers. There was much heat and humidity, even suffocation, no proper ventilation. So, in those conditions only the workers used to work. And even weekly holiday was not allowed. From Sunday to Saturday, all the days are working days for the workers. And if they do not go to work due to illness or any other fever or disease like that, they lost the day's wages. If one day they stop going to the industry for work, that day's salary used to be cutted. And work would begin every day at the dawn in the mills, stop only at the sunset. And even the payment paid in the proportion to the amount of goods produced. There is no fixed salaries for the employees. If the production increased and the mill owners got the profits, do you think that the workers' salary also increased? No, that had never happened. Although it was not a worker's fault or mistake, and if something went wrong with machines, owners would deduct the laborers' money. Workers or laborers, they are not skilled workers. On the machines, if something goes wrong, the mill owner used to cut salary from the workers' payment. And there were plenty of fines also. If they come late or cloth got spoiled, the owner thought the laborer did not work sincerely, and there were long hours of working, 14 hours in summer and 12 hours in winter. In winter, the sun rises a little bit late and very soon the sunset will be. So, in the winter it will be 12 hours, but in summer it was 14 hours. So, very such a long hours the workers used to work in those days. But a strange thing happened. In 1880, electric bulbs began to fitted in the mills. Is this a positive thing for the workers? Now they no need to work in the darkness. But this became a negative point for them, because even after the sunset, the workers had to work. In 1880, the electric bulbs were started fitting in the mills or the factories. So, now is this a positive thing or a negative thing for the workers? They should be happy that they no need to work in the darkness now, but it became a negative thing. If the sun sets, that work would be stopped. But now they use it to work even after the sunset. In spite of all these hardships at work, there was no security for the employment. If the workers are working in these many problems also, if they are working, there is no security. That means whenever the mill owner or a factory owner thinks that some people, he used to remove from their job. So there is no security of job in those days. So with all these problems, the workers fed up and they started revolting or rebel against the factory owners and started demanding for the proper facilities. Let's see the laborers' struggle. The laborers struggled against their oppressive working conditions. From 1870, there was one strike after the another in Mumbai. In 1892, the mill owners of Mumbai were thinking of reducing the wages of laborers. When the laborers got to know it, they prepared for a struggle. Though the production increased also, they never increased the salaries of the laborers, but even they started thinking of reducing the wages of the laborers. Knowing this, all the laborers working in the mills started fight against the owners. See, here is a poster depicting the labor meeting. All the laborers used to conduct a meeting like this, and they decided to fight against the factory owners or the mill owners. In 1900 and 1901, around 20 mills in Mumbai reduced the laborers' wages by 12.5%. In response to this, 20,000 mill workers stopped work and went on strike. All the 20 mills remained closed for 10 days. Similarly, in the same manner, in 1919, the cost of living was raised, but the wages of the laborers were not increasing. In 1919, the cost of living was increasing, but the laborers' salaries were not increased. So, all the laborers in the mills of Mumbai went on a strike and mills were closed for 12 days. And the laborers were not only fought for their wages and fighting for their demands at the factory, but also they fought against the British for the freedom of India. During this time only, in 1908, the British sent Lokmanya Tilak, famous Indian freedom fighter. Do you know him, children? Yes, he is a very famous freedom fighter, Lokmanya Tilak. The other name, Balagangadhar Tilak. So, he was supporting the workers on behalf of workers. For that reason, the British government exiled him from India for about 6 years. And all the laborers in the Mumbai went on strike against this decision of British government for 6 days. So, at this time, one strange thing is that the educated people in India, they did not support the laborers working in the industries. Most of the educated people in India did not pay attention to the problems of the laborers. But surprisingly, in Britain, the factory owners, traders and social workers were worried by the condition of the Indian laborers. The industrialists and social workers of Britain began to put pressure on the government to improve the conditions of the Indian laborers. As a result of this pressure, the government started thinking of reducing the working hours and making some laws for the sake of workers working in the mills. Why do you think that Indian educated people did not support the laborers of Indians? Because they thought that if facilities were laws made for the laborers, the production would be decreased. Indian industrialists were suspicious. Suspicious means they did not believe about the concern for the welfare of the Indian laborers by the British. They thought that Britishers are supporting Indian laborers because of their selfish reasons. The educated people in India had believed that if the laws were made in the interest of the laborers, industries would not be developed. But this fear was not fully justified, because the factories began to earn profits, new mills were being opened up all the time, industrial development lay in the hands of the laborers. So, the laborers' needs improvement in the working conditions became relevant. This was realized by some other people later on. Let's see the timeline of laws for the welfare of the laborers. The first law for the working class was made in 1881, and this act made laws for the working children. Later in 1891, laws were made for working women. In 1911, the laws were made for men. Let's see what are the important laws made for children, women and men. The first Factory Act in 1881 was made for working children. Children below the age of 7 years cannot be employed. 7 to 12 years children should not work for 9 hours for a day, and 1 hour break for each day and 4 leaves per month should be given. According to the Constitution of India, no child below the age of 14 years shall be employed to work in the industry. And the employment of children below 14 years is prohibited in all the occupations, whether it is a factory, industry or agriculture or or domestic under the Rights of Children for Free and Compulsory Education Act 2009. And in 1891 the laws were made for working women. Let's see what are they. First of all, the women cannot be made to work more than 11 hours a day, and 1.5 hours should be given for break for each day, and children working hours reduced from 9 to 7 hours, and even children below 9 years should not be employed. So these two are amended. Now let's see what are the laws made for men. Men are the largest number of employees in the factories. So for them in 1911 new laws were made. Adult male workers could not be made to work for more than 12 hours each day, and half an hour break for every 6 hours should be given. So children, these are the laws made for the working children, women and men. So on behalf of the working laborers in the industries, new organizations started formed to bring the problems of the workers to the owners. Let's see what are they. The laborers organizations. With the time, the problems of the laborers became well known, and some educated people began supporting to the laborers now, especially media. Media means at that time mostly newspapers, and small organizations for the welfare of the laborers started emerging. During strikes, we have seen previously in Mumbai for 12 days like that, the strikes were made by the laborers. So during that strikes only, the laborers formed as an organizations or associations to bring the problems to the owners. Those are known as labor unions. And these labor unions conduct the strikes and negotiate. Negotiate means they will bring into some agreement between the laborers and the owners. During this time only, two main labor unions were formed, namely Girni Kamgar Union, which was emerged in Mumbai in 1928. This is very famous union which led an effective strike in this year. And secondly, Mazdoor Mahajan. This union was formed under the influence of Gandhiji in Ahmedabad. In India, throughout 1928 and 29, there was strong wave of strikes on the railroads, ironworks and the textile industry. Trade unions, that means the laborers on behalf of laborers, number of organizations grow rapidly during this period. Here is a general knowledge question for you children. Or the first women trade union leader. Her name was Anasuya Sarabhai. You can see the picture of her in this slide. She was a first Indian women trade union leader. Laws began to be made to put restrictions on strikes. The government appointed labor officers now, and the government began making efforts to ensure that the laborers to solve their problems through the labor officers rather than going to unions. Where was the first industry set up in India? Yes, it is in Mumbai. In 1896, how much percentage of tax was levied on Indian cloth? It is 3.5%. After this only, there was a conflict between the Indian traders and the British government. Name the freedom fighter who was exiled from India for 6 years. Yes, it is Lokamanya Tilak. And when was FICCI established? It is in 1927. Name the two main laborers' unions formed in India during British times. Girni Kamgar Union and Mazdoor Mahajan. And what is the greatest example of achievement of Indian industrialists? Yes, it is steel factory at Jamshedpur by Jamshedji Tata. Now here are some important questions you need to Read the textbook thoroughly and find out the answers and try to answer these questions. Why did a rapid development took place in Indian industry during the First World War? Why did workers go on strikes? And which were the two main labourers' unions to be formed in India during British times? And lastly, identify the large industrial cities in an outline map of India during the 20th century. That's all for today's session, children. With this, we will conclude this chapter and we will meet in another session with a new lesson. For better understanding of the concepts, please solve the worksheets given for you and visit the official site of SCRT. Thank you.